Okay. Hey, welcome everybody. We're going to give it just another minute here to make sure that we get folks in. So give us just a minute, and then I'll kick it off. So welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us for a little bit today. Ron, good to see you there.
Hey, good to see you, man. I'm in New Mexico today, so at the house.
Okay, good, good. All right, we'll give it a few more seconds here, and then we'll get rolling. Andrew, hello, how are you?
All right. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Hey, hi, Andrew. How are you?
Good. Can you hear me all right?
Nothing to it, right? Yep, we got you good.
I,
Thanks for joining. Okay, cool. I will go ahead and get us kicked off here. I'll keep it brief because we got some people that are going to talk about some pretty fun stuff today. So a brief intro and then off we go. So my name is Bob Allred. I am the director of the end user compute practice here at Right Systems. I've been at Right Systems now for I guess about 18 years, quite a long time. Before that, I spent some time in healthcare, about 7 years with a national healthcare organization. When I was there, I was introduced to some new technologies. Now, this is a long time ago. This is way back in the early 2000s. Oddly enough, I was introduced to these new technologies by Right Systems, who was my partner at the time that I was working there. And at the time, we had some issues to solve, and we brought in Citrix, and we were trying to solve some issues around some application compatibility. We had a lot of remote and satellite offices and workers that needed access to client server apps. So we brought in Citrix, great solution, solved all the issues that we had. As we walked through that, we realized that there was more use cases, pinpoint specific use cases for Citrix at the time. And so we started deploying thin client devices in order to do that, right? To bring the value around that type of device that would look for a simple management platform and easy to replace devices for folks, easy use. And managing desktops was hard back then. We didn't have all the tools and the bells and whistles that we have today. It was what we were doing was a little more rudimentary, but the management was a little more rudimentary. From imaging devices to updating and deploying applications to deploying patches. It was a bit of a tough time. I think we spent a lot of time sitting with users at their desks, right? Troubleshooting issues and updating applications and reinstalling applications and stuff like that. So to get into the thin client world at that time was pretty cool. However, that brought a little more challenge for us, right? One of the things that we struggled with in the early days with Citrix was printing, right? It was hard. Print drivers weren't made for multi-user environments, but we shoved them in anyway, and we tried to make them work. And we spent a lot of time troubleshooting printer issues and spooler crashes and those kinds of things. And we just spent a lot of time on that kind of stuff. So we brought in another technology, again introduced by Right Systems, called Tricerat, and so I've been a long time advocate of what they do and a partner of theirs, and they certainly helped us solve a lot of those problems that we had around printing. But the interesting thing is that we fast forward to today, a lot of those challenges that we had way back in that day, they don't exist anymore, right? Printing, it just kind of it works, right? Especially in these VDI environments, Citrix and VMware, and they've done a great job making these things work, and they work pretty well. But what we've seen over time is that the complexity on the endpoint has gotten worse, right? Back in the day, the endpoint was a Windows machine, and we would run antivirus on the machine, and then all of the security checkboxes would be checked. Like that was it. We, maybe you ran a Windows firewall in the box, but you ran AV and you were done. But, fast forward today, and we're trying to manage applications and patches and AV or MDR and EDR and, blah, 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 right? Managing endpoints today is a very complex, it's just a complex operation. And sometimes I feel like I'm diametrically opposed to, maybe CISOs or security folks, right? Where they're like, look, we need to secure the endpoint. We've got a toolbox full of tools that we can deploy on this endpoint and really lock it down and manage it. And I come in and say, well, why don't we just not do that? Why don't we just put a secure endpoint on the desk and just manage it in the data center and make it simple, right? So a little bit of what we're going to talk about today is that idea of simplicity, of management, administration, end user experience, all of those things that tie in to make ideally our jobs as administrators more efficient and more simple, which thus provides a better user experience for our folks. So again, I'm not going to kill a lot of time here. We got some really exciting people to listen to. First, so on the phone with us today, I'll briefly, is Andrew from Tricerat, longtime friend of mine, longtime friend of Right Systems. And then we also have Ron Nair on the phone today from IGEL. And we're going to go ahead and kick it off with Ron and let him go first and kind of, dive in a little bit and give us some information. Along the way, any questions, drop them into the chat. We'll make sure we hit those. And then ideally, we got a couple minutes for some Q&A at the end. So Ron, let's do it. You're up.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
We got you.
Okay, cool. What I'm going to do at IGEL, so I'm running with IGEL. I'm out of Corrales, New Mexico. I support our channel partners in the U.S. on being able to support IGEL and deliver that to customers in the U.S. What I'm going to do is go ahead and everything we do is on IGEL itself. So let me go ahead and share. So can you guys see my screen okay?
We got you.
Is everything? Yeah, okay, excellent. So basically, this is my personal desktop here. And so everyone within IGEL, we get an AVD session, but we also have the ability to run local apps. So what I'm kind of showing on my desktop is actually WebEx. For this call today, I'm actually running WebEx natively on the IGEL endpoint. So not in a VDI session, but just running it native there. I do software development and coding and write documentation as code. So I have Visual Studio Code. So if I'm editing a document, I can do all of that, check it into GitHub, just do all the workflow on my IGEL device. So this is Mermaid doing the diagrams. It shows it here. If I switch over to my other desktop, you can see the output of this from the IGEL Community Docs site. If I go into that basic setup guide, that's what it looks like generated, from the web page there. So anyway, so everything we do there. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of go through some slides for IGEL, talk about our preventative security model, kind of the TCO, and kind of management around that. So what I'm going to do now is let me just switch over to the other side, close this down, and let's just go ahead and open up my file manager, demos. And so I got a PowerPoint. On this one, I'm just using LibreOffice to open it up. I could have opened it up in PowerPoint as well, coming off of the web. So let's go into slideshow mode. So anyway, what IGEL is instead of running Windows on the endpoint, we're really looking at running a secure Linux-based operating system on the endpoint, and then either going into a VDI session like AVD or Citrix or Horizon, AWS workspaces, any of the ones you can think of, we essentially support around that. So being able to do that by moving Windows off the endpoint, you lighten the load on the endpoint. So older devices, 5 years plus older devices will run great and excellent performance because you're not having all of that extra agents and stuff running on it. If it's security, agents, whatever running on data loss prevention stuff running on there, all that stuff you can kind of kick off and get away from and do that. So really that's what we do there. And then we have strong partnerships with hardware vendors. Think of HP, Lenovo, LG, where you can go to them and buy devices from those vendors with IGEL already pre-installed on the device. So really we're looking at reducing the TCO by up to 75%. That attack surface is just dramatically reduced around that. And then that old hardware, think of an old laptop that you bought during COVID. It's now, what, 5 years old? COVID, 5 years. Well, and saying, well, battery life isn't that good, et cetera. So if you say, I'm only getting an hour or 2 hours out of my laptop battery, you put IGEL on it, less taxing, you could double or triple, the battery life of that device and keep using it. And really what we talk around this is what we talk about our preventative security model in reference to, you can configure it so there's no local data, or if data is written during a session, when the user logs out, that data just gets dropped and stuff. And next time they come in, it's brand new and clean around that. So very secure on that for that. And then the data encryption, other things we can tie into your identity providers, your IDP for single sign-on, and then get into other apps around that. So really, if you think about that preventative security model, you have certain pieces, like you have your VDI session, you have your other user endpoint management, your IAM, stuff like that, the hardware, et cetera. You can think of IGEL as kind of that core that brings it all together around zero trust for access, isolation, and trust. So really, it's basically taking those Windows devices or other, Dell ThinOS or other devices, converting it to IGEL and continuing to run that until the hardware breaks or it's, your time to replace. So those TCO savings in this little example, we're looking at like 20,000 seat example, we're looking at over $40 million in savings. A lot of that's tied around the hardware, saving 48%. So you're extending the life cycle of the devices. Also, you can purchase lower end devices to run, so you don't need a high end device to run IGEL. You just make sure you've got 4 gig of RAM and 16 gig of disk space. You can go back pretty far in time to find x86 based devices that you can run that. And then from a software point of view, all of those other agents and stuff that you're putting on the devices, you're probably spending more than several times more than the cost of what you would spend for IGEL per device per month around that. So those over savings around operations as well, simple configuration. Think about help desk, since it's read only. If a user calls into the help desk and says, hey, I've got an issue, the KT or knowledge script from an IGEL point of view, the service desk person would just say, hey, let's restart the device. Does everything work? And it does, because it's anything that kind of got junky or whatever on there, when you reboot it, read only, it comes back to that pristine state. So a user calls a help desk once, knows, oh, all I got to do is restart the device and I'm good. They'll never call the help desk again. So those help desk calls dramatically reduce, the training, all of that stuff comes through. And then from a manageability point of view, with IGEL and our cloud services, we have the ability to either have UMS that the customer deploys themselves, or right system someone manages, or we also have UMS as a service where IGEL stands up the UMS and gets all of that set up and takes care of all that care and feeding, and then all you do is get access to it, set your policies, and off you go, in permissions. So that's really the kind of the benefits around that. It's just kind of that preventative security model to kind of keep everything secure. We have a strong TCO, so you can work with right systems and IGEL. They can come through and for your use case and sizing, come through a TCO model around that and show that dramatic savings by doing that. And then the manageability, being able to manage, so we can do, the IGEL, full IGEL, we can do display screens. Think of what happened with CrowdStrike a couple years ago, when all of those display screens everywhere had the blue screen of death and other bad things happening. You can run IGEL and just have it do the display screen. And we're also doing IoT type stuff, the Internet of Things. So think of these little embedded devices doing certain, doing things out there, either in manufacturing, healthcare, et cetera, kind of around that. And that's kind of really the pieces that I wanted to touch on here. From before we transition over into the next session around the printing and the enterprise printing, is that IGEL has basic stuff built in to the system for basic printing. And if I go into, let me switch over to my other screen here. If I go into IGEL community docs, I have a little document here that talks about how to reference to cups printing. So you can do some basic stuff and automate some simple workflows around that. But really, from an enterprise print point of view, you would want to look at something more that does full auditing, secure printing, and all of that. So that's kind of the pieces I wanted to touch on. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now.
Hey, Ron, can I ask a
Okay.
question?
Yes. Sure.
Yeah, as I alluded to when I kicked us off here today, I've been around for a while. Been doing this VDI and this app delivery and this thin client thing for a while. What is really fascinating to me right now is the change in the landscape of delivery, right? And you touched on it a little bit around, obviously we're doing VDI still and we're doing app delivery still, but with the ability to put applications on the desktop, on the IGEL OS, as you were showing there, and then the rise of the secure browse products, whether it be Citrix or Island or what Palo is doing. Can you just kind of touch about how that fits in an IGEL landscape with customers? We've always thought of thin clients as, if I'm doing VDI, I need a thin client. But if I'm not doing VDI, I don't need a thin client. But that's not true anymore.
Yeah. So a lot of the stuff is you move to more SaaS-based stuff, web-based, client stuff like that. You could think of something like Google Chrome and a Chromebook or something, right? But then it's more of maybe then you have a simple use case. A Chromebook may work, but then you say, oh, I need to have a local app to do this, or I need other functionality, right? Then it's like you need to look for something else. So for example, with Island, working with them is that we have the IGEL devices set up so that they just boot, they can show the company logo or an Island logo, and then immediately just go into the Island browser. So they wouldn't interact with any of the IGEL desktop. It would look like a Chromebook, but it's really an Island book. So you could do something like that as well for certain use cases. So really the nice thing with IGEL is you can do the simple use cases like a Chromebook type thing. You could do it with Edge, or you do it with an enterprise browser like Island. And then if you've got more complex use cases, display screens or controllers in a factory or whatever, you could really use IGEL. It's not just a one-trick pony. You can do all these other use cases with it very easily. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's cool. Okay, awesome. Let's see. No questions in the chat right now, Ron, so we can let that go, and we'll see what pops in as we move on. So
Okay.
great, thank you. All right, so moving on, we have Andrew Parlett on the phone. Again, a longtime friend of mine, a longtime friend of Right Systems. Andrew is the CTO of Tricerat. So Andrew, thanks for hanging out with us today. And what do you got? Let's pass on some knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. I think you might need to make me presenter so I can share my screen here.
Let's
Maybe I
see if
can.
I knew how to do that.
I'll just, maybe this will do it. You got
Hey, look at that, magic.
it. Cool. Yeah, thanks. It's exciting to be here. And like you said, Bob, we've been long-time partners with Right Systems, and that's been a great relationship with you and your team. And we're also IGEL Ready partners, so we work very closely both on the community side with Ron, also the IGEL Ready program, to make sure that our solutions are all fitting in that ecosystem and working together. And it's just great to be talking about having these solutions all kind of combined together, layering in together. Bob, like you were talking about, taking things that are complicated and complex and growing more so, but making them simple, delivering a better user experience, but doing that in a manageable and a secure way. And we certainly want to talk a bit about that security aspect, along with, tagging along with some of the other things that Ron talked about. And, the very last thing there that he showed with those scripts in the community, some great work that he's done there. And in many situations, that's a great piece to have as that puzzle. But also, like he said, you get into these enterprise environments where you really need a comprehensive solution that's flexible, can layer into the environment and really manage it at a more advanced level. And so in those environments that have critical print needs, and certainly highly regulated environments, those are times that you look for these kind of these modern print management approaches. And the reality is that a lot of times printing is overlooked in that IT strategy until either there's a failure or risk exposed. And so, in our brief talk today, I just want to talk a bit conceptually about things to think about and ways that that printing can fit into these overarching architectures. But of course, I invite you to dig in more with Right Systems and us and IGEL to really see how it fits into your environment. So a couple of the challenges that we'll talk about in terms of modern printing today, that hybrid workforce, and really hybrid anything and everything from cloud and on-prem to your endpoint devices to where your apps are running. It's always a variety of things that are all coming together that are adding that complexity. The security and compliance pressure I've certainly talked about in that complexity. And so we'll kind of look at those three approaches of security, cost, and manageability and how modern print strategies work into that, and also maybe dispel some of the myths. Sometimes there's an immediate reaction or an underlying thing of printing doesn't really fit into a zero trust architecture, can't be secured. Maybe there's some sometimes there's a common talk track of print servers can't be secured and are out of date and just need to be eliminated from the environment. But there are some environments where the advantages of print server make a ton of sense and can be secured. So I want to certainly touch on that specifically, how these are ways that fit into that preventative security model from IGEL. And then we'll talk about encryption, role-based access, basically those tenets of zero trust. The high level ones are never trust, always verify, the least privilege access, and then assume breach. And throughout this, you'll see ways that printing a modern print management like Tricerat ScrewDrivers can fit into that. All right, I want to take a couple minutes really just to talk about print servers. Like I said, sometimes the first reaction is, nope, let's get rid of them. But especially in a VDI environment and architecture where you have a data center, where you have that centralization of computing and resources and user sessions and data and all that, it makes a lot of architectural sense to have a print server alongside there, either within that data center or deployed to your large remote environments. And the advantages are that centralized manageability, the streamlined performance and the reliability, the driver control, having one spot where that driver is, the queue management, the monitoring, those type of things. And with ScrewDrivers, one of the key pieces to this VDI solution is the virtual print driver of Tricerat ScrewDrivers. And so the fact that you have just one print driver on the print server means that driver is not being distributed out to every single VDI session and everything everywhere. It's that one virtual driver that's preloaded in the image and dynamically configuring itself during a user login. So you get the advantages of the print server, but then the virtual driver and the dedicated print server agent of Tricerat ScrewDrivers reduces that attack surface and makes it more higher performance and secure, which we'll look at here in just a moment. So that always verify thing, certainly, the never trust, always verify aspect, encrypting all traffic, be it even if it's just on that local network or if it's coming across disjoint networks or, of course, the internet from the cloud to on-prem. So that's certainly that encryption piece adds that layer of security immediately into all the traffic going for printing. The dedicated and the robust server agent, this is one of the key pieces to the performance I talked about because, I think the bad rap from print servers is thinking back to Windows NT and Windows 95 and like the old print shares, SMB based. And we came across, as an industry, like Print Nightmare was an issue because of those old protocols. But with a modern print approach, we put an agent on that print server. So all traffic goes through those dedicated ports that are encrypted and also protected from those old legacy protocols. So we get the performance, we get the scalability. We see print servers that have a significant number more queues than, the older style approaches. So you get all those advantages, but in a modern, secure, and scalable way. Of course, one of the key things to this modern print management is flexibility. And we don't want to have, we're not going to say this is the one approach for everything. Oftentimes, different environments will do multiple things at the same time of like, we'll have print servers and we'll have direct IP. Take, for instance, an environment that has more distributed computing, more endpoint-based computing, kind of like what Ron was showing earlier, where if the computing is happening out at the endpoints, then sometimes it will make sense to have the print pass straight from that device to the printer. And so to be able to layer all this together in one management interface, and for the user experience, they get all of this layered in together, be it print server, direct IP, client printing. It's all centrally managed and presented as one interface to that user. And one key thing there at the end there is that dynamic installation. We'll talk about like the intelligent aspect of this later. But you don't have to have admin permissions. That's another hole in security. When people think about printing, it's, oh, well, they need full admin access to those workstations. But with our agents out there, all of the drivers get distributed, installed, all without having to have that user take elevated access. So again, one of those key parts to the security. I'll kind of glance over this a little bit, but just real quickly touching on the architecture, obviously at a high level, but like that upper left part of the administration, the configuration database, kind of like that administrator side. But then here with print server printing, that session agent might be VDI, it might be an IGEL endpoint, it might be a mobile device. These different things can then stream the printing in an encrypted and compressed way over to that print server and then out to the printer. Likewise, with a direct IP setting, you still have that back end that's managing the printing, what users and what groups get what printers, what devices get what printer, all in an intelligent way, but obviously straight from the session agent to the printer. And I can imagine maybe a line across the middle there that might be, my administration sessions different from where I am remotely working today. And so a lot of times these two different architectures will layer in together in a single environment, or based on what your needs are for your environment, whether you're centralized in a data center and highly regulated, or if you're more distributed computing, you can adapt based on what those needs are. So as more of the security focused piece, the second piece I want to talk about is the simplicity aspect, the reduced IT overhead, ways to make this easy to do. And I kind of touched on the fact that assignments in our console are a drag and drop of a printer to a user or to an AD group or a device that they're connecting from. So you can, for instance, take the name of the IGEL device, assign a printer to that, and when someone walks up to that IGEL terminal, they immediately in their session have the right printer for that location. And so it might be user-based, it might be location-based, it might be a combination of both, but those are kind of the advantages of having that real easy and real visible way of assigning printers out into your environment. We touched already, I think, on those other aspects. And then, Ron, you brought up there within the IGEL advantages of ticket reduction and help desk calls. That's a huge thing of having good, effective print management as well. Number one, the administrator has visibility into those assignments, or when changes need to be made, they can see it very easily. And just having that visibility reduces mistakes, or should someone need access to a different printer, it's very quick and very easy to do that versus, older styles of group policy management or scripting or just like pushing it out to the users. You have that control over the environment. We do have a self-service component, so users can open that up. We really pride on an interface that delivers the right printer at the right time to that user. But there are some users that move around or have different needs during the day. They can pop open that self-service portal to get either a list of printers, a map of printers, and again, and with that least privilege aspect, it's only the printers that they've been granted to see. They click add. That printer shows up in their session immediately, again, reducing the need for a help desk call. So that's definitely a big piece that we talk about and we see effectively achieved by our customer base for Tricerat ScrewDrivers. And that third piece, this is a word that we've been using constantly through this webinar, really is that manageability piece. The intelligent user-based mapping, so that from that centralized console, a very easy way to assign and deploy printing, giving them that least privilege access. And I was touching on this earlier, the hybrid flexibility to combine print server printing, direct IP printing, client printing, be it one, be it two, be it all of them, all into one single pane of glass. And for the user, it's just the right printers and the access they need. Printing should fade to the background. They should log in, use their app, use their data, hit print, and they're done. And that's really what our goal here is, to give the administrators the tools to achieve that for your user population. So just to wrap up, there's three main points that we hit on, and very much aligned with what that IGEL message was, as far as security and having printing fit into that kind of a zero trust architecture, the impact through the optimized performance and the user productivity, and then just making it a more simple operation for admins. It reduces errors, it makes it easy to manage, it fades the background, and really that flexibility is something that we see really as an advantage to modern print approaches versus the very strict and unflexible and error prone environments of the past. So these are really just reasons to consider as you look at your endpoint management strategy, but then also as users are connecting in and the way that printing is deployed both within VDI sessions and out to those endpoints. Certainly all advantages to a modern print approach. So that's what I had. I meant to say this earlier, but for all you listening, if there's any questions either about Right Systems, IGEL, Tricerat, or how it all works together, certainly something that we can address here. And yeah, Bob, any other follow up from you?
And that was fantastic. I had a couple of questions along the way, and well, you answered them. So really good job. I think Ron's got something. Ron?
Oh, no. I'm good. I think where we're talking about the manageability and stuff like that. Yeah, it's being able to scale into large enterprises and stuff is
Well, I think the value. I mean, you say manageability, and that is it, right? When I got introduced to Tricerat a long time ago, and when I got introduced to IGEL, what I quickly learned, and what my engineers continue to tell me, is the simplification of management and the ability to save a significant amount of time, right? I've heard the IGEL story 100 times where one person can administer thousands and thousands and thousands of IGEL devices all by themselves, right? And the same goes for Tricerat, right? These are the types of tools that free time up. No more group policies for managing printers, right? As an example. So, I think I harp a lot when I have conversations with people, I harp on two things: administration and user experience. And so I think you guys touched on both of those. One more thing that Ron touched on, I think, is the idea that IGEL has around device replacement, right? A lot of organizations I talk to have budgets, and the budget turns over every year, and the number in the budget is the same every year, right? Every year we replace a third of our PCs, or a quarter of our PCs, or 20% of our PCs, or whatever that number is based on your budget cycle. So the ability to step into that budget cycle and maintain those devices for another year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years at the cost of the IGEL license is it's a pretty significant thing that we can do inside the budgeting process for folks, and help them save some money, and ideally reallocate that money to something else that's critical. Ron?
Yeah. I think with the hardware devices, I mean, the quality and the life of these devices just keep getting better and better. If you look at stuff from HP, Lenovo, LG, great devices last a long time, and just use them for a long time, right? Being able to extend battery life of an older laptop, all those purchases for COVID 5 years ago, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff looking through to try to refresh this. And then not only that, end users, once they get a device and everything's working, they don't want you to come in and take it away from them. It's like, no, I don't want to refresh. Everything's working great. Just leave me alone. And so it'd be nice kind of around that. And one thing I didn't touch on that is kind of a big thing too is that for business continuity or DR, for those use cases where you still have to run a fat Windows endpoint, the question is, what are you doing around business continuity or DR in the case of, not if, but when that machine becomes compromised for whatever reason? We have some customers that are like stockpiling laptops or using SunGuard to stockpile laptops in case of this outage, right? we have the ability now to do dual boot so that we could actually put IGEL on the same device as the Windows device. And they're running Windows. And then in the case of Windows being compromised or bad, they just push the button, reboot, and it'll reboot into IGEL. And then they continue to work. They can have their island browser or whatever they need and continue to work while you're triaging this bad event that occurred. So think about all that money you're spending stacking laptops at, somewhere and trying to keep those refreshed. You can do an IGEL and dual boot kind of combination with that. Either dual boot the device or have a USB. My keychain of USB devices here on my UD pockets, and just plug that in and go. So same thing. So we have some customers, they have remote, and they, even with IGEL, they'll give them a UD pocket, because if the hard drive fails in the device, they're dead, right? They could just plug in the UD pocket, boot off of that USB, and continue to work in that case. So, different use cases, different scenarios about having that business impact and the return to productivity for the workers, right? We also have like call center stuff where they have these remote people that they've hired, and condition of them hiring is they send them out a UD pocket, right? And they send them out a UD pocket and have them plug that into the device, boot it, do some quick tests, and everything works. They pass a condition for enrollment and being onboarded into the call center. If they can't figure that out, they're like, we're sorry, keep the UD pocket and go. So it's very simple, for those remote users or call center remote users to onboard them, make sure they can actually work. So some cool use cases there too.
Sweet. Okay. Excellent. Andrew,
Bob,
any last minutes here?
Yeah, I wanted to circle back. You brought up a little earlier about kind of a maybe not a trend, but certainly seeing some now of the applications running out on the endpoint, certainly through those secure enterprise browsers. And certainly for us and joint customers of ours, we've been seeing that too, that admins are starting to look at that. And, sometimes I'd caution admins not to be too quick to push things to the edge, but yet sometimes that's absolutely the better case. And so, I've mentioned VDI a lot in terms of, the Tricerat printing component, and that is a focus of ours for sure. But that is becoming more of a thing, and a lot of our investments now are towards the print agents running directly on the Linux client and the IGEL endpoint for those scenarios. Again, it's another piece of that hybrid puzzle, and making sure that in an environment or in different environments that have different needs, making sure to adapt into all those different possibilities. So, so you would comment on that, and that's definitely something that we've been seeing as well in terms of our joint implementations.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, no, that makes complete sense. Good. Yeah, I mean, you said hybrid. That is the world we live in today. It's not, it's not as cut and dry as it used to be. It used to be fairly straightforward, right? Application, desktop, go, right? And it's a complex world these days. So, cool. Okay. I don't have any questions, which means you guys did a phenomenal job. There's no questions in the chat, so yep, thumbs up, Ron, 2 thumbs up. So I think we're a couple minutes ahead of schedule. I think we're good to go. So thank you everybody for spending some time with us today. We really appreciate it. Andrew, thanks for the time. Ron, thanks for the time. Please follow up with us. Questions, comments, anything you want to chat about, dig a little bit deeper. These guys are great. They're easy to get a hold of, and they're super helpful. So thanks again, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care all. Bye-bye.